I am very, very proud to say, my name is Ty Allan Jackson, and I am a children's book author. But my path to becoming a children's book author is a little unusual. I started out 7 years ago in corporate sales. Not very happy with what I was doing. It certainly wasn't my passion. It certainly wasn't my purpose. But on a hot summer's day, my 7-year-old son came up to me and asked me a question. And this question would change my life. And the question was very simply, Dad, can we open up a lemonade stand? Now, originally, I was born and raised in the Bronx. You don't do lemonade stands in the Bronx. It kind of just doesn't work that way. But I live in Western Massachusetts now, and lemonade stands are commonplace. So, me and my cute little son, we get a tablecloth, pitcher of lemonade, ice, cups, little umbrellas. You gotta have the little umbrellas. And I stand there next to my son as the proud dad with a big sign saying, lemonade, 75 cents. Lemonade, 75 cents. And in 3 hours, my son made $50 selling lemonade. Completely blew my mind. I'm thinking, we make $5-6, get some ice cream, call it a day. $50, that's a whole new conversation. So he said, Dad, what am I gonna do with all this money? He said, can I get video games and bubble gum and can't? No, you can't. But I started to think, what could he do with it? I certainly wanted my son to spend it and spend it wisely. So when I don't know what to do, I go to the bookstore to see if I can find a book to help me teach my son, in this case, about finance and entrepreneurship. So I go to one of the big box bookstores, and I walk inside, and you see tables, and on these tables there are naturally tons and tons of books. As I make my way towards the children's book section, I see a table with teen books on it. And the books that were there were very much like these. They were, couples holding hands and frolicking through the flowers and walking along the beach. Really wonderful coming-of-age stories. All the books on the table featured white characters, except one. This one. This book is titled Monster. And despite it being a critically acclaimed book, as you can see, it's a little different from the other books that are there on the table. It was a little troubling to me. I said to myself, what do people think when they walk past this table and they see the distinction between these books? What do they think of people of color, specifically black men, just by walking past this table? But I was focused, steadfast. I'm here to get a book for my son to talk about entrepreneurship. So I make my way towards the children's book section, and I look up on the shelves, and first of all, I saw no books about finance or money. I'm like, that's kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, money's something we should be introducing to our kids early. There should be books about it, but for whatever reason, no books about finance. And then I realized, where are all the books featuring children of color? Any color. I didn't see anything there. There were maybe a few, actually, like Me and Barack Obama or the Underground Railroad and stuff like that. But there were no contemporary books featuring children of color. Very odd. So I'm making my way through the children's book section. I come across the picture book section. Surely I could find one here, but really nothing there but princes and princesses, and of course they were all white. So an associate walks by, and I asked the associate if I could please get some assistance. Could you help me? I'm trying to find a book for my son. My son is black. Do you have any characters or books with, black characters on it? And she said, very frustratingly, no, I really don't see any. But how about a universal book? There are a lot of books with animals that could be relatable to any child. Oh, look, there's one with a monkey on the cover. Needless to say, my trip to Barnes & Nobles, or rather to a big bookstore, didn't want to shout them out. Oh well. Needless to say, that trip didn't go very well. After a conversation with the manager about my experience, I walked out very confused, a little upset. I sat in my car right in the parking lot, and I just thought about and processed what had happened. And I said to myself, I've got to do something about this. I said, you know what, I'm going to see if I can find someone to help me write a book, or to write a book about a little boy that teaches kids about finance and entrepreneurship with a black character. And then I thought about this quote from Gandhi: be the change you wish to see in the world. So I thought, you know what, maybe I could do it. So right there in that parking lot, I got out a pen and pad and I started writing. And little did I know how much I really loved writing the story. A whole hour had passed before I realized I was still sitting there writing this story. The name Danny Dollar just popped into my head. So I go home and I start typing up this story. Day after day, week after week, I start writing the story, and I realize how much I love writing the story. It takes me a good year to actually write the story where I'm proud of it, where I love it, like this is just totally awesome. So if you want to get a book published, you have to reach out to an agent, and then an agent in turn gives it to a publisher. So I reached out to 150 agents from New York to California, and I was rejected 150 times from New York to California. Nobody wanted to touch this book. So I figured I've got two options. Option number one, I could print out this manuscript, put it on a frame, stick it on the wall, and think about what might have been. Or I could figure out how to do it myself. So I'm big into prayer, but I prayed to Google. I said, Google, how do you publish a book? And he gave me these great guides and resources for me to start my own company. And I did. And the name of the company is titled Big Head Books. And in 1 year, this book was born. The book is titled Danny Dollar, and it teaches young kids about entrepreneurship and finance. It's a really proud moment for me to have this book in my hand. So now the hard part. I gotta sell the book. So in the very first month, I sold 1,000 copies. Friends, family, social media, reaching out to businesses and organizations in my community. The second month, I reached out to Carver Bank. Carver Bank is the largest black-owned bank in America. I sent a copy of the book along with a letter to the CEO saying, I think this would be an amazing book for you to teach the children in your community about entrepreneurship and finance. A week later, the CEO called me and said, I love this book. Would you please come here and help us teach the children in our community about the importance of finance? Oh, by the way, can I order 1,000 copies? Yes, you can. I quit my job that day. Today, I spend my days going from coast to coast, talking to children about the importance of reading and entrepreneurship and finance through this book, Danny Dollar. One of the great joys and loves that I have is that I have children come up to me all the time and say, thank you. Thank you for writing this book for me. Thank you for writing a character that looks like me, that talks like me, that sounds like me. It is so essential for children to be able to see themselves in literature. It really makes all the difference. When I was a kid, I really didn't have characters like that. There were a few, maybe like Fat Albert or the Evans family from Good Times. But like them, I was poor, I was struggling, raised by a single mom. I could relate to them, but I couldn't aspire to be them. I was already them. But there was one character in particular that I did look up to, who I did admire. George Jefferson. George Jefferson was a strong black man. He was a great father figure. He was a pillar of his community. He was intelligent. And more importantly, he was a boss. I wanted to be a boss. That's kind of cool. And he was an entrepreneur. As a kid, I first had to figure out what an entrepreneur was. But once I did, I started with the newspaper route. I started doing odd jobs around my community. Lo and behold, I became an entrepreneur. I wound up having a lot of things in common with Mr. Jefferson. Obviously, I'm short and bald, like Mr. Jefferson, but now I'm also an entrepreneur. But I had to see myself in Mr. Jefferson before I could become that. And now my son, who did the lemonade stand, last year opened up his own pizza shop. He was an entrepreneur. We have to see these things before we can become these things. It makes all the difference in the world, socially and culturally, but also instinctually. As humans, when we accomplish something great, when we are in competition and we're victorious, by instinct, we take our arms and we throw them in the air victorious for triumph, accomplishment. This particular pose is actually called pride. Pride or something that you believe in yourself or something around you that you're a part of. It is something that we all instinctually have done at some point or another. About a year ago, I had the opportunity to visit a school in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In a low-income community, inner city kids, this particular school had over 90% black children. I was able, along with my partner, Eddie Taylor, to have a we had a GoFundMe account, and we were able to raise thousands of dollars that we could fly down there, and I gave over 600 of my books to over 300 children at this particular school. When I got there and greeted the kids and talked with them, it was so enlightening to see these amazing, beautiful faces. But when I started handing out these books to these kids, this was their reaction. That same level of pride, that same level of belief. There is a character that looks like me, that sounds like me, that acts like me. This particular pose was actually a little infectious. It seemed to go throughout the whole school. As an author, I make it a point to sign every single book that it is that I distribute. I don't let a book get out of my hands. I think it's important for children to have a signed autographed book from the author. But I gave out 600 books that day. So I signed 300 books one day and I had to come back the following day to sign the other 300. At the end of the day, I was summoned by the librarian. She called me into her office and asked me to sit down. And she said, with tears in her eyes, "Thank you." She was able to witness something that she had never seen before. She said, in this particular school, a lot of the students struggle. They have learning and reading disabilities, and this is not a comfortable place for a lot of them to be. When that bell rings at the end of the day, they can't wait to get out of there. But not yesterday. Yesterday, they got books. Books with children that look like them. And when that bell rang, every child walked out of the classroom with the book in front of their face like that. She said kids were bumping into each other. She said some of them just got frustrated and sat down and read. She said some of them even missed the school bus because they were so busy reading. With tears in her eyes, she said in 20 years as an educator, it's the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. It is important, it is essential for the characters in literature to reflect all the children of our country, of our world. It makes all the difference in the world. And if you think that it strictly applies for only children of color, you would be wrong. Obviously, having books featuring children of color are important to all people, including white kids. It allows them to be more objective, more open-minded, less prejudice. It is remarkably important and essential for them to see the diverse world in which we live in. But for some reason, the literary world has not caught up to this. You realize that 92% of all books published only feature a Caucasian character. That makes no sense to me. I don't understand that. We live in a country where our president is a black man. Yet the primary tool we use to teach our children books don't reflect the diversity of the country in which we live. I don't understand it at all. Conspiracy theory time. 2 out of 3 children who cannot read proficiently by the 4th grade will end up in jail or on welfare. To coincide with that, 75% of all juvenile offenders are functionally illiterate. There is a direct connection between illiteracy and incarceration in America. In America, we have 319 million people. 122 of them are minorities. That makes 62% white and 38% diverse. But not in the prison population. In the prison population, it's the opposite. 64% of the population of people incarcerated are people that are minorities, with only 36% being white. And the majority of those people that are incarcerated are black men. I firmly believe that the lack of promoting literacy and having children of color be able to see themselves in characters in books trickles down to higher literacy rates and eventually mass incarceration of people of color in this country. Not to mention, 150 years ago, it was illegal for people of color to know how to read. Compound that with the fact that the United States incarcerates more of its citizens than any other country in the world by a lot. In fact, more than the next 3 countries combined. One of the countries that you won't see or you don't see on this list is China. China, which has almost 4 times the amount of people that the United States does. And they are not on this list. But what list are they on? The highest in literacy rates in the world. They are number 1 in promoting literacy to their citizens. Where does the United States rank? 24th. We like to call ourselves here in America a superpower. Well, you can't be a superpower if your children can't spell superpower. I think we can all agree that learning and reading is the most important component, or one of the most important things that we can instill in our children. In fact, I like to believe that other than love, it is the most important thing that we can give them. It is the foundation of all learning, and it's nothing to me more important than the growth and development of having children read. But these books that we give them have to reflect all of the children from our world, from our country, from our community. It is essential to the well-being and welfare to our children. I firmly believe that if Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz was Native American, there would be more Native American leaders and CEOs. I believe if Nancy Drew was Hispanic, I believe that we would have more Hispanics in our law enforcement agencies. I believe if Captain Nemo were black, that we would have more black engineers and more black explorers. It is essential, it is imperative for our children to be able to see themselves reflected in literature. Because when they see themselves in something or someone, it makes all the difference in the world. Thank you.